All right, so it's 12:01. We'll go ahead and get started here. First off, thank you everyone for joining us today to kick off our Summer of Wellness webinar presentation, Fact or Fiction Nutrition Edition. My name is Emily Davidson. I'm the Employee Wellness Manager, and I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker today, Kelsey Kropp. Kelsey is a UAB dietetic intern. And in her presentation today, she'll be covering some common misconceptions about popular nutrition topics like fad diets, trends, and much more. So I'm really excited to hear from her today. Before we get started, I wanted to go over some housekeeping items. We will be recording this presentation today. So if you miss anything, you'll be able to catch it again on our YouTube channel later this week. And then if you do have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. We have Emily Marzalek here today. She's our employee wellness specialist, and she'll be monitoring the chat for us today. So if you have questions, please enter those in the chat and we will have time at the end to go over those. So with all that being said, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Kelsey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Y'all, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Let's get started. So I'm so excited to be with y'all today talking about Fact or Fiction Nutrition Edition. I'm going to go over a few different topics. So we're going to start with debunking the nutrition label. We'll then go over some popular fad diets and do some fact checking through those. And we will also review some media trends and determine if they are too good to be true or not. So we're going to get started with debunking the nutrition label. So the nutrition label has a lot of common misconceptions about it. So when looking at the nutrition label, a lot of people commonly believe that it is a one size fits all. All of these calculations, the calorie, serving size, and nutrition on the label is actually based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And some people may need more than that, some people may need less. So that is definitely something I like to bring awareness to, just so individuals can understand that the numbers on this package aren't necessarily tailored to you as an individual. They're based on a generic 2,000 calorie diet individual. And that can really be important when you're taking into consideration different nutrients because of the calculations and serving size. So on this bag of Cheez-Its that could get picked up at a convenience store, it's like a single serve, single package. It says the serving size is 25 crackers. But some people may need more, some people may need less than that to feel full, and that is a-okay. That kind of brings me to my second point that a lot of times we see these single packaged food items that kind of come in like a personal size bag. And we would assume that these have one single serving, but that is not the case. It's really important to look at the serving size. This bag actually has 4 servings in it. And that's really important for individuals who may want to watch certain nutrients that they're consuming, or specifically for diabetes, if they are having to track carbohydrates to dose insulin. There's not 18 grams of carbohydrates in this one bag, there's 4 times that. So just something to be aware of when looking at the nutrition label. It's not one size fits all. You can totally eat the whole bag and that's a-okay. You can eat half the bag, that's also a-okay. It's more kind of focusing on what you need specifically, not necessarily that 150 calories per serving or 2,000 calorie diet. So another common kind of misconception about the nutrition label that I hear quite a bit is if you can't pronounce the ingredients on the nutrition label, don't eat it. They're not healthy. So I would love to know if y'all would eat a food item that contains the following ingredients. I'm going to read them to you, so sorry if I stumble. So these ingredients are chlorogenic acid, positive catechin, negative epicatechin, procyanidin, B1 and B2, rutin, and phyloridazine. So sorry if I stumbled. Those are some pretty lengthy words, but would y'all eat this? I'm so curious. Let me see if anybody put something in the chat. It's a trick question. Oh no. Okay. So this is actually common components of an apple. So, apples contain these compounds. They act as cell-protecting antioxidants. And I just want to draw attention to this. These are nutrients that can be good for our bodies. And that kind of blanket statement, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, I think can lead people to kind of fearing foods or feeling like they can't eat certain foods. But all of the ingredients in our foods, even like prepackaged foods, are very regulated by the FDA to make sure that they're safe for us and make sure that they're not going to cause us any harm. So even if you can't pronounce it, it is still okay to eat it and it is still a good food item to consider. So next up, we are going to fact check some fad diets. So the first fad diet I want to touch on is the low fat diet. I feel like this has been just a common dietary trend year over year. A lot of people feel like fat is the enemy, and the low fat diet specifically focuses on consuming foods low in fat and less than 10% of total calories consumed from fat. So, really, really restricting the fat there. So, is fat really the enemy? I want to touch on the different types of fat. So, unsaturated fats are actually known to be heart healthy and they can have a positive effect on blood pressure and cholesterol. So, these unsaturated fats can be found in our avocado oils and olive oils. And these oils are known to be positive ingredients to include in our overall diet for our health. Nuts, seeds, nut butters, and fish, such as salmon, are also high in unsaturated fats. So these are known to be beneficial food items to include in our diets for our overall health and our heart health. So I do want to talk about saturated fat. This is one fat that you don't need to completely exclude, but the USDA does recommend minimizing. So less than 10% of total calories specifically from saturated fat. These can be potentially inflammatory. They can have a negative effect on our cardiovascular health when consumed in excess. So I really want to highlight the when consumed in excess part. I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to make people think they can't have items high in saturated fat, such as butter and coconut oil and palm oil. These are just things to limit and minimize. Maybe don't have butter with every meal. Maybe have it with one meal a day, and that's perfectly fine. But these are recommended to be consumed in moderation, specifically less than 10% of total daily calories. So low fat diet, it's really about the type of fat that you're consuming, and you don't necessarily need to follow a low fat diet to follow a healthy diet. Fats are actually beneficial to our diets and to our health, specifically the unsaturated fats found in things like nut butters and olive oil and avocado oil. So next up is the keto diet. So the keto diet is a diet that was specifically developed as a treatment option for epilepsy. That was the focus when this diet was determined. They were focusing on trying to find a dietary intervention to help treat individuals with epilepsy. So it is an extremely low carbohydrate diet, less than 40 grams of carbs per day. And because of that, it can kind of eliminate some fruits and vegetables. Our fruits and veggies do have carbs in it, but they're very nutritionally dense. So they are good components of a diet, a balanced diet. But I would love for y'all to type in the chat what you think 40 grams of carbs looks like. Like if you were to eat 40 grams of carbs, how much pasta would that be? How many slices of bread would that be? Okay, half a cup of pasta, two slices of bread, zero. Okay. So 40 grams of carbs is about two slices of white bread if we were to quantify it. So very, very, very low in carbohydrates. That can be really tough to follow. And our carbohydrates are made of glucose. Glucose is our brain's preferred fuel. So our brain really, really likes its glucose. That is what it kind of uses to operate optimally on. So when we restrict our carbohydrates excessively, such as following the keto diet, something can happen called the keto flu. And some common symptoms are headache, constipation or diarrhea, weakness, muscle cramps, and bad breath. So our body really doesn't like being in such a low carb restricted diet. And that's why we see some of these side effects and flu-like symptoms. So there can be some long-term effects of the keto diet, specifically with kidney function, increased cardiovascular disease risk, and increased insulin resistance. And the reference daily intake for carbohydrates is about 130 grams per day, or 45 to 65% of total calories. So that's significantly more than that 40 grams of carb per day. And that is kind of the reference range for what is considered to be an optimal amount of carbohydrates to eat per day. So keto diet, definitely not something that was developed as like a healthy option. This was specifically treated for epilepsy. I think people have kind of taken it and turned it into a overall diet for good health, when in fact it can potentially be harmful. So that's something that I really want to highlight, is that this diet wasn't developed for weight loss. It wasn't developed for cardiovascular health. It was developed specifically for epilepsy, and it is a very difficult diet to follow. There are also some side effects that can potentially occur with the keto diet. So carbs are not the enemy. Carbs are very necessary for our bodies and our brains to function appropriately, and restricting them in such a drastic way can actually have some negative effects. So that's the keto diet. Next up, one of my favorites to talk about, juice cleanses. Juice cleanses involve taking the kind of meat of the fruit and removing it, and all that's left is the juice. So the skin's left behind, the meat's left behind. And because we're taking out kind of the bulk of the fruit or vegetable and just leaving the juice, all that's left in a lot of these are sugars. It's also missing fiber from the rest of the fruit, which is really beneficial for digestion. A lot of claims around juice cleanse type dietary practices is that it's going to help your body detox. So I want to talk about if you actually need to do anything additional to detox your body. So our livers detox our bodies for us. So go us. Our livers are working hard every day to detox our bodies. They neutralize toxins, and then our kidneys excrete waste from our bodies on our own. So there's really nothing additional that you need to do to detox your body. Your body's already doing it for you, which is great. So these juice cleanses, I think, kind of have that health claim that it's a good detox for your body, but in fact, your body doesn't need any help detoxing. It's already doing it for you. And the juice cleanse isn't really going to have any effect on that. So, because we're removing the whole parts of the fruit and vegetables, the high sugar juices aren't necessarily the best. If you do enjoy drinking juices, I would opt for a smoothie that's made for the whole fruit or vegetable. This includes the fiber that can kind of slow down that insulin spike from the sugar in the juices. It also contains all of the nutrients from the whole fruit or vegetable included, because you're blending it all together, not removing any of it. And there's a great opportunity to add some protein and fat, such as Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, or nut butter to a smoothie. And this can actually make it a really well-balanced snack or even a meal. So instead of juicing, I highly recommend eating the fruits and veggies whole, whether that's just a plain whole piece of fruit like an apple, or including them as a whole fruit or vegetable in a smoothie. Okay, let's talk about some media trends. So are they too good to be true? A lot of media trends I've seen recently are green powders, the trend to avoid frozen and canned foods, and then the trend to only eat organic. So let's talk about green powders. Green powders claim to have a whole daily dose of fruits, veggies, vitamins, increased energy, and they also claim to improve gut health. So it's kind of saying this is like a all-in-one powder that you can take daily that has everything you would need in it to get all your veggies, vitamins, and even increase your energy. So they do contain some nutrients. They are typically made from whole fruits and veggies to start with. But they're incomparable to eating the fruit and vegetable as is. They can also be very expensive. So they can be pretty high in price compared to just buying regular fruits and vegetables at the grocery store. And because they're taking these fruits and vegetables and dehydrating them into a powdered form, the water-soluble vitamins, so our vitamin C and B vitamins, could be lost during dehydration. So those vitamins that are kind of claimed to be in there may actually, in fact, be lost in the processing of these powders. So when we're talking about vitamins and minerals, more doesn't necessarily mean better. I think we can kind of get into that headspace that the more you do or the more veggies you eat, the better. But your body will actually take what it needs from a balanced diet, and then anything excess is excreted from your body. So if you are eating more than your body needs, it's not necessarily doing your body any good. It's just kind of giving your body a little bit more to process, so that your body can kind of have more to filter out. Fat soluble vitamins can also potentially cause toxicity when taken in excess. So that's things like vitamin A. So that's just something to be aware of. And then these green powders are considered supplements, so they're not regulated by the FDA until after market. So I could do a whole nother spiel on supplements. I'm going to keep it short and sweet right here, but with our supplements, they are created and then they are put on the shelves. And then the FDA doesn't get involved until someone reports a complaint about them. So with supplements specifically, and green powders, looking for a third party regulatory sticker. So, like a USP label is something that's really beneficial to make sure that a third party is fact checking that what is in these supplements, what the label says, is actually in the bottle. Supplements are also something that you want to be careful with and talk to a healthcare provider about if you're on any medications. There are a lot of drug nutrient interactions. So with supplements, before you consider taking one, I just want to recommend talking to your healthcare provider about the medications you're already on and if there could be any potential negative interactions with a specific supplement before you take it. So that is green powders, I would say too good to be true. They're super, super expensive, and regular fruits and vegetables are way cheaper and have all the benefits and nutrition that you need in them. So frozen and canned foods, there are quite a bit of claims in the media that say frozen and canned foods are less healthy. They say they're not as nutritious, they're not fresh, therefore they're not good for you, and a lot of claims that they contain unhealthy additives. So I want to talk about our frozen and canned foods because I think they are just a fabulous addition to have on hand in your pantry, in your freezer, and can make a great addition to any meal. So frozen and canned foods can be very, very nutritious options. They are typically inexpensive. They can be cheaper than fresh foods, which is great. They are frozen and canned at peak ripeness. So they're taking all the nutrients, especially with frozen foods, and they're locking them in right at peak ripeness, whereas some of our produce that is fresh on the shelves has been picked, put on a truck, transported, then sits in the store until you buy it. So there's a little bit of kind of delay in peak ripeness and freshness to when you actually purchase it. And frozen and canned foods allow us to include a lot more variety when certain produce items may be unavailable. So when selecting frozen and canned foods, there's some kind of specific things to look for. So look for no salt or sugar added. For canned foods, you want to look for canned in water or 100% juice. And then you want to specifically look for no added seasonings. Frozen and canned foods can be a source of sodium, but there's a lot of options that don't contain any added sodium or seasoning to focus on. So ideally, the only ingredient should be that specific fruit or vegetable. So if you're buying frozen broccoli, it should just say broccoli on the ingredient list. If you're buying canned peaches, it should just say peaches on the ingredient list. So that's just kind of tips to select frozen and canned food that are a little bit less high in the added sugar and sodium. There are some great options that have no added sugar, no added sodium that are great additions to have kind of stockpiled in your pantry or your freezer. There's also pre-made full meals that are frozen. And for these ones specifically, you can find some that are 600 milligrams of sodium or less. And these are great options for busy nights, for busy weeks, or for lunches. Definitely, like I rely on some frozen meals being in grad school. So they're great options to have. They're super convenient too. And they've kind of been demonized. And I want to make sure y'all know that they are still really great options to incorporate into a balanced diet. Okay, the organic only health claim. So the term organic is not necessarily a health claim or label, it's a type of farming. So when something has an organic label on it, it was grown in a way that met very specific organic requirements. These requirements, though, don't exclude certain pesticides. So organic foods can still contain pesticides. And some may be grown in manure, so there is a higher E. coli risk. So I just want to say, wash all your produce before consuming. I do have a family member who would only buy organic and then told me she didn't wash any of her produce because it's organic, so there's nothing on it. And I was like, oh my goodness, we need to have a discussion. Like, it could have a higher E. coli risk, and it also has pesticides on it. So wash all your produce, whether it's organic or conventional, before consuming it. The pesticide levels are highly, highly, highly regulated in organic and conventional foods. So these are super regulated by the USDA and the FDA on the levels that can be used to make sure that they are safe for consumption. You still want to wash them, but even conventional items that were grown with pesticides or not grown organic are still great options. And the levels of pesticides used are heavily monitored and regulated to make sure they are below a level that could cause harm. So that's my spiel on organic. But of course, I can't finish talking about organic without talking about the Dirty Dozen. So this list comes out every year saying that these specific food items should only be purchased organic because they're grown with more chemicals or pesticides. The Dirty Dozen is kind of a silly claim to me. So, yes, we know that even if something's grown organic, chemicals can be used, pesticides can be used. The Dirty Dozen food items, specifically, people claim they have more pesticide use on non-organic. This isn't true. And even the pesticides that are used are, like I said, very regulated. And when the highest pesticide residue levels were recorded by the USDA, they calculated out how many of each Dirty Dozen food item an individual would need to eat before reaching the minimum level of pesticide, kind of like the lowest level that could potentially cause harm, or even like be picked up. And that was 600, like over 600 strawberries, over 1,000 servings of spinach. And this is in one day. This is not like over a year. This is literally the number of servings you'd have to eat in one day to reach that minimum level. 26,000 servings of kale, 8,000 nectarine servings, 1,000 apple servings, almost 1,000 grape servings, 1,500 cherry servings, 6,000 peach servings. So you kind of get what I'm saying. You would have to eat an insane number of these food items in a day to even reach that potential pesticide residue level. And like we talked about before, even organic food items have pesticides used. So the Dirty Dozen is a silly claim, in my opinion. I think it's kind of like a scare tactic. And these foods are perfectly safe to buy conventional. And because they're so regulated, there's no possible way you could even eat um, the minimum amount to cause any harm. So that's my spiel on the Dirty Dozen. And that concludes my presentation. So if we have any questions, I would love to answer them. If there's anything you want me to go back to, I'm also happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Kelsey. That was really informative. I really loved the apple thing that you showed at the beginning. That was shocking to me. I didn't think those ingredients were in an apple. And I've also
Mhm.
heard that multiple times, where you're not supposed to eat stuff that you can't pronounce. So that was really helpful. We did have one question in the chat, and I think we're getting some more. One question was when you talk about butter, which is better, butter or margarine?
So, when talking about butter and margarine, they are both very comparable. Margarine is typically plant-based. So, margarine's a great option if anybody is vegetarian, vegan, avoiding dairy for whatever reason, if they have a lactose intolerance. Butter, like we know, contains that dairy. I think they're both very comparable when it comes to the saturated fat profile. So I really think it's more of a taste preference and a dietary preference if for some reason dairy is an issue or you're following a vegan or vegetarian diet. Obviously, margarine would be a better option for you, but plain old butter is perfectly fine.
Okay, another question we have is any opinion on canned beans versus non-canned beans?
Canned beans are one of my favorite staples to have on hand. I think they're super high in protein. They're also a great fiber source. So I love my canned beans. There's no real nutritional difference between canned versus non-canned. I think with non-canned, if you're buying just a bag of beans, you do have to soak them overnight and cook them. So canned beans are a little bit more easy to have on hand, quick and simple. If you like the bagged beans better and you have the time to soak them and cook them, great. There's no negative to that. But I think canned beans are a really great option to have, specifically looking for the no salt added ones. They're super versatile. You can use them for a lot of different things and just a great plant-based protein option to have in your pantry.
Another question, what is the best method for washing fruit? Is it using water sufficient, or do you recommend using vinegar or other methods?
Yeah, so washing your fruit. Water is fine. There's no need to use any sort of soaps or anything like that. I think the biggest thing when washing fruits is that you are kind of like if we have a clamshell of strawberries and we're just trying to rinse it in the clamshell and maybe save some time, we're not really getting to those bottom strawberries. So with our berries, I really like to put them in kind of like a colander or a sieve that's a little bit more spread out and making sure you're really getting a good rinse on all the berries and that you're letting the water kind of all drain off through that colander. With our more, let's say like an apple, like our harder produce, you want to use a scrub brush. So kind of a soft bristled brush for our apples, our even like avocados, lemons, anything that's a little bit more firm. A scrub brush is a great option. Same with veggies. So like bell peppers, um, things like that. But anything that's kind of soft where you don't want to damage it, the colander method's really good and just really make sure you're giving it a really good rinse, moving them around, rinsing again. Yeah.
Okay, and the last question we have for now. There might be a few more that pop up, but what do you think of the South Beach diet?
The South Beach diet. Let's see. That is one that I am not super familiar with. Let me do a quick little search to see what it's about. Okay, it's a modified low carb diet. So I think depending on the carbohydrate level, that 40 grams of carbs a day that we saw in the keto diet definitely can be hard on your body. It really depends on the carbohydrate level of the diet. I think the low carb diets can be really tough to stick to because our body craves those carbohydrates for our brain fuel and for our fast energy. In general, when it comes to diets, I think a balanced diet is best, incorporating all the food groups, incorporating lots of fruits and veggies, and then kind of following the half your and veggies method. A quarter carbohydrates, a quarter protein is a really good just visual dietary model to follow that isn't super restrictive. Okay, I saw more. It's no carbs for the first 2 weeks, and then you add them back slowly over the next 4 weeks. Whew, that sounds a little tough. Yeah, no carbs for the first 2 weeks sounds like it would be pretty tough. It also kind of sounds like it follows that kind of keto diet trend where the keto flu symptoms could potentially occur. Um, and kind of like I touched on before, there really is no reason to cut out all carbohydrates because our body does prefer them as our brain fuel. So that's kind of why that keto diet can have some headaches, brain fog type of stuff. So my opinion of general South Beach diet, I would say there's no reason to cut out the carbs, and adding them back slowly over the next 4 weeks, I don't really think is doing any benefit to your body, as it would if you would have just kind of kept the carbs and balanced out protein, fat, fruits, and veggies.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have, but we'll stick around, of course, in case there's any more questions that come through. But if there's not, thank you so much for that. That was really informative, I think so, and really interesting to me too. We have recorded this presentation, and so everyone that participates can go back and watch it. But we will stick around for more questions just in case.